Hey guys, it's Bob from Brainless Thoughts, and this video is to announce the launching of Brainless Geek. So under our own header of the Brainless Thoughts channel, James and I will be doing kind of our own thing because we have our own specific little hobbies that we like to engage in. As you can see, one of mine tends to be video games. I'm kind of a nerd myself. I've mentioned that in several videos. Okay, not kind of a nerd myself. I'm a massive nerd, and I was a nerd before it was cool. I was a nerd before people were playing it on YouTube and thinking they were coming up with something new. Dungeons and Dragons, video games, retro consoles, anything you can think of, and I'm probably into it. And Brainless Geek is going to delve into those things. Of all my nerd hobbies, Dungeons and Dragons is absolutely my favorite one. And it comes with kind of a stigma. People tend to go, oh, you're just a loser, or you don't have any friends, or anything like that. And that may have been something that people truly believed back in the satanic panic and back in the 80s and maybe early 90s, but that's definitely not true anymore. The world's kind of been opened up to these hobbies that before were not accepted. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since I was 9 years old, and I'm 36 years old now. And a lot of my fondest memories and a lot of my most greatest times of my life were spent around a table rolling dice with some of my closest friends. So here are my top 10 reasons why I think you should play Dungeons and Dragons. Number 1, escapism. Life can be difficult. Life can be hard. And Dungeons and Dragons lets you escape that. Escapism comes in many forms, whether it's video games, whether it's a movie, whether it's an incestuous show about dragons. All sorts of different things provide escapism in this world. Or it's your fantasy football league, which is just Dungeons and Dragons for, jocks. Regardless, escapism. We all need to get away. We need something that takes us away from our lives so that we can just kind of breathe for a minute. And I think Dungeons and Dragons is a great way to do that, and I would say even a wholesome way to do that. We'll get into that later. Number 2, skill building. You can't play Dungeons and Dragons if you're stupid. You really can't. Well, you can, because you can do anything if you're stupid, but you can't do it well. Dungeons and Dragons requires reading skills, requires some basic math, sometimes some more extensive math. It requires thought processes, social skills, all sorts of things. And the more you play Dungeons and Dragons, the better you get at them. So, I kind of wish that Dungeons and Dragons was in every school across the United States. Across the world, because it would just be fantastic. I know that I got better at reading through the multitudinous amounts of Dungeons and Dragons books I read. And it got me into history, because I wanted to see where all the ideas for the monsters and the worlds came from. I wouldn't have a love for Tolkien if it wasn't for Dungeons and Dragons. Number 3, socializing. So people on the fringe of society or the outskirts of society, they are drawn to Dungeons and Dragons because it allows them to sit around a table with a group of people who they may not know at all and get to know them. Many things allow you to do this, whether it's any other hobby, if you're playing sports or doing anything else like that. But Dungeons and Dragons has a specific way of forcing you to use social skills. If you know anything about the game, you know that constant contact and communication is how you play the game. So when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you have to use these social skills. If you're not good at them, you'll get better, and the better your social skills are in your communication, active listening, all those kind of things, the better you are at Dungeons and Dragons. So I know for me personally, I'm not really bashful, but when I was younger I really was. And Dungeons and Dragons helped kind of get that out of me. Number 4, it's one of the only games I know where absolutely anything is possible. In Dungeons and Dragons, the sky's the limit, space is the limit, the ethereal's the limit, the multitude of universe is the limit. There is no limit. You can do whatever you want. You want to run a game about being a space flea on Xerxes 8, taking down a giant space banana? So be it. You can do that. Or if you want to play a game that looks just like Game of Thrones, you can do whatever you want. As long as the DM agrees and the players agree, there is absolutely no rules. Video games are fantastic. Obviously, I love them. But there's rules. Dungeons & Dragons has no rules. Even the rule book of Dungeons & Dragons says there are no rules. I think it's like page 2 in the 2nd edition manual. Number 5, no more satanic panic. I feel like it's finally the time in the world where I can do this video and show my hobby and people will be like, oh, that's cool. There's still going to be people like, that's dumb, I'm judgmental, and even though I play fantasy football and make my leagues, which is really just Dungeons & Dragons again, but with jocks, those people are going to exist. But now we're finally in a time frame where you can be like, I like Dungeons & Dragons, and people are like, oh, okay. When I was younger, and I would mention it, I was immediately cast off into a subgroup, and people judged me, even though I played football, and I wrestled, and I did all this stuff. It didn't matter. All that mattered was that I played Dungeons and Dragons. That became the defining thing of who I was. That became the defining label. It's not like that anymore. We're more open and more free thought. Heck, that's why we do Brainless Thoughts. Open thinking. Kind of like looking into things instead of just being judgmental about them right from the start. And now that there's not that label on it, I think everyone could actually enjoy some Dungeons and Dragons in their life. Number 6. Dungeons and Dragons is extraordinarily cheap. In fact, you don't even need a pencil to play Dungeons and Dragons. If you have one friend that owns the books, you can get by. You could get some dice. Or you can be a bum and just borrow your friend's dice. But you really don't need anything to play Dungeons and Dragons. I've gone commando, where I've played Dungeons and Dragons with a piece of paper, a golf pencil, and 1 6-sided dice. You can make it work. It's not the best way, but that's all, kind of based on one's opinion. You can make it work. So it's extraordinarily cheap. It's not like you have to go out and buy the new video game every time a new one comes out, or you have to go do something else. You just sit down and play. Number 7, being a part of a story. We all love shows. Haven't you ever watched your favorite show, favorite movie, over and over and over again, whether it's the Avengers Endgame or Stranger Things or whatever, or Game of Thrones, and you wish you were a part of that story? Dungeons and Dragons doesn't only let you experience a rich story, it lets you be a part of it. You get to be part of that story. You get to experience the things. Could you imagine your favorite storyline of a movie, but you get to be one of the critical characters in a role going through those things, those trials and tribulations? There are very few games that let you do that. Even video games or VR experiences, you're still playing a game with bound set rules of what your character can be. In Dungeons and Dragons, the rules for what you can be are yours. Number 8, you can play Dungeons and Dragons all out, or you can be a casual. It's okay, just like video games, another one of my loves. It accepts all things. So if you are like me and you and your brother have collected like over $5,000 in second edition manuals that no one will ever look at, but you just have them to have them because you love Dungeons and Dragons, that's fantastic. If you show up to a table and at least you have some modicum of like ability to speak to humans and you're invited to a game, that's cool too. You'll find that the Dungeons and Dragons community as a whole is very open and very inviting to people because we love nothing more than to get new people to play the game. If you meet me and you're like, hey, I want to learn about Dungeons and Dragons, I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I'm super excited. And I'll teach you everything about it. That's really cool. And even if you only want to come like every once in a while, that's cool too. Because we want everyone under our umbrella of geekdom. Number 9, confidence. Dungeons and Dragons builds confidence. Take anybody in a situation, throw them into Dungeons and Dragons, and if they have no confidence, they will build that confidence through that group dynamic. They get to play something they're not. So maybe you get to be the hero for the first time in your life. Is it real? No, it's not real, and I understand that. But it helps. So it helps with people who are perhaps bashful, getting to play with a group that they know is not going to judge them. And so they can play that character that maybe they've always wanted to be inside. And maybe through the playing of that character, they actually start to pick up some of those traits. Maybe they feel more confident playing the garish rogue or the brave knight. And maybe they actually learn to be the brave knight. It's a theory that I've had, and it may be a little strange sounding to you, but running games since I was 9 years old, that's 26 years of running games, I have found that when you get people into D&D and they stick with it, they get better at being people. Because they learn the social skills, the confidence, and things to speak in front of public groups. People who play D&D a long time tend to have more confidence. Number 10, it's just really fun. Some of the best stories I've ever had involving hobbies are from Dungeons and Dragons. My friends to this day, my friends and family, we can sit around and talk about storylines from our characters for hours over and over and over again. I have ran games where I've made people cry. I've made people cry tears of enjoyment. We laugh. I've had people get so excited. It's all those things. It's like when you watch the Super Bowl and your favorite team's about to win. If you have a group that's really good and dedicated and your players are invested, those things happen. And I will hold on to those stories just like you may hold on to, your favorite movie or your favorite book for the rest of your life. And that's what's so amazing about Dungeons and Dragons. It's a personal experience. My brother-in-law and I have stories about characters in Dungeons and Dragons that we will probably be telling each other when we're 85 years old. That's amazing. Not many games can do that. Not many hobbies can do that and kind of give that feeling, that personal relationship. So yeah, that's it, guys. Those are the top 10 reasons I have, in no numerical order of what's the most important, why I think you should play Dungeons and Dragons. I'd like to announce that I am going to be running a Dungeons and Dragons group through our Brainless Geek channel. We're going to run roughly 5 to 6 players. I will be the Dungeon Master or Game Master, and we're going to do this so we can show people our kind of games. There are YouTubers out there that do some stuff that's pretty cool, and I've watched them, but I find that our games are really unique, and when I mean our, I mean my group, because they're not my games. They belong to like this community of ours, and I want to show that to you. I want to bring everyone into this. Ever since I've played Dungeons and Dragons growing up, I've always felt like it's something that the world's kind of missing out on. And now that it's become more mainstream, I feel like it's time now to bring our version of what we love, this hobby, into the mainstream itself. There'll be some videos coming out soon where we're going to talk about the Brainless Geek Dungeons and Dragons series, the streaming of the videos. We're going to talk about our character creation, different things, the world itself. It's a unique world that I created myself. Don't want to give too much away, but we'll get there. And with that, I hope to see you in the future when we start sharing our adventures in a world that we call Parle.